the thing is, Tron is already a pretty good matchup for this deck, but this also just put that over the top.
Right.
Matt Sperling, however, playing Affinity here with, a relatively new addition with Experimental Frenzy as kind of the top-end threat in the deck. And, I have seen a few games of Matt's, and, I mean, he was able to do some pretty silly things with Experimental Frenzy. Turns out, when you play a bunch of 0-mana cards in your deck, Experimental Frenzy can, there's the capability of just going off with that card.
Yeah, we've seen some absolute silliness from the Frenzy. It really is compounded by the fact that not only are the cards cheap, by and large, sometimes even free, but also, this is a low land count deck, so you don't hit that thing where you hit a land or two off the top of your Experimental Frenzy. The one thing, of course, is that it is a little expensive for the cards that they're used to casting in this Affinity build. Usually the cards cost either 0 or 1 mana on average, and this one does cost the full 4.
Yeah,
here.
definitely. Typically, the curve tops out at 3 with some combination of Etched Champion and Master of Ethereum, but instead it looks like Matt is choosing to kind of not play some of those 3-mana cards in favor of playing Experimental Frenzy.
But a good start here for Sperling. He's facing down, nothing on the other side of the board outside of Search for Tomorrow, which is on suspend. There's Lightning Bolt, though, to critically take out the Steel Overseer before Matt has a chance to untap, maybe play another creature or two, and then start activating it. It is one of the many must-kill threats on the other side. Of course, the most difficult to deal with, though, is Cranial Plating. That's the card that all they need is one thing. Yeah,
definitely. There's a handful of these payoff cards in the Affinity deck, all of which you need to deal with. Cards like Arcbound Ravager, Steel Overseer, and Cranial Plating kind of being the top targets. And, Cranial Plating is an artifact, and many decks don't actually have answers to artifacts game one, and that is part of, kind of the main reason to play a deck like Affinity, because game one, because people aren't going to be able to interact with cards like Plating and Experimental Frenzy, you're going to have a big edge there.
Now, what just happened here is Tianwen plays very quickly, so it can be a little difficult to keep up, but he just played Monvoli Acid Moss, and he targeted the Inkmoth Nexus. That's going to get him another forest on the battlefield. In this case, it's a Cinderglade, and, of course, kill the land on the other side. And, as far as mana development goes, that might not be super critical for Matt's game plan, but, Inkmoth Nexus is a win condition, especially when you have cards like Cranial Plating.
Yeah, but Matt Sperling had a very nice start here with Mox Opal being one of the best cards in the deck with Cranial Plating and a Steel Overseer, but doesn't look like he's able to. He's found a creature here. Really needs to find something to equip that Cranial Plating onto to get in for some damage. And, typically Monvoli Asimos isn't even very strong against Affinity. No. I wouldn't be shocked if he actually boards it out in this matchup. Especially if, for example, if there's just an Arcbound Ravager on the board, what are you even going to kill with Monvoli Acid Moss? Most of the lands are just artifacts, so you can just sack it to the Ravager.
And some of them are indestructible. It is really not good.
Which would actually just fizzle the Monvoli Acid Moss.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything, I think Matt Sperling has the best chance game one because most decks do improve against Affinity after sideboard.
Here's the big turn, Paul. This is where 6 mana is on the battlefield, and there it is, Primeval Titan from Tianwen. Pretty much going to lock this one up.
Yeah.
Right? Matt Sperling just has not had one of those explosive draws from Affinity, and that is going to allow Tianwen to just sort of calmly, coolly work his way up the chain, and the chain in this case being number of lands on the battlefield. That really is the critical measure here for this Titan Shift deck.
Yeah, so Matt is going to be able to get in a big attack, but yeah, he knows the writings of the wall. This Primeval Titan's going to attack, get in for a ton of damage, and Matt just doesn't have enough pressure to finish off Tien. And sometimes when you watch Tien, kind of feels like you're watching like a replay at 2x speed. He plays so fast.
He really does. I was down there in the feature match area, and it is quite a sight to behold. All right, that is game number 1 going to Tianwen. We're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll have more live magic here from London. Don't you go anywhere. And welcome back to coverage here of Mythic Championship 2 from London. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Cheon. We are in the quarterfinals. This is our first set of quarterfinals. We're running them simultaneously here. Next round, we'll have the other 4 competitors. Here, though, our back table. We've got Brian Braun-Duin in his first Mythic Championship top 8, facing off against Adrian Zhu, also in his first Mythic Championship top 8. I think the lifetime earnings there kind of tell the tale of who the more experienced player is. It is BBD by a lot, a world champion, etc. on his resume, multiple Grand Prix wins as well. So let's jump in here and see where we're at. It looks like we're still in game number 1 here, Paul. And this is Tron versus Humans, perhaps the two most popular decks in the field here in London.
Yeah, definitely. And I believe, earlier today I quickly asked Brian what he thought about the matchup, and he did feel that Tron was slightly ahead. The Humans decks, of course, can get some draws, have a little bit of disruption, but the Tron deck, just has so many haymakers in the matchup. Cards like Ugin, the Spirit Dragon, Walking Ballista, and Oblivion Stone just completely wiping the board.
In the meantime, by the way, BBD is facing down, easily his greatest nemesis here as a Humans player, and that is Ugin, the Spirit Dragon, already on the battlefield as we come in here for Adrian Zhu. And I have to say, there ain't much you can do about that as a Humans player. Usually what happens is Ugin comes down, sweeps away all the permanents on the other side of the battlefield, and then makes it so that you really can't ever rebuild as well, thanks to his plus ability or even just minusing again.
Yeah, so I imagine Adrian at this point, because he has Tron, probably getting a Sanctum of Ugin here to try to get the chain going. Anytime he plays a colorless spell that costs 7 or more, he can go ahead and fetch a colorless creature. So Walking Ballista likely being one of the targets, as it's one of the best creatures in the match.
It is, right?
It is the best. There's, of course, Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger as well.
I meant card.
I
think it's Ugin and then Walking Ballista are kind of the cards that you really want against Humans.
Yeah, Oblivion Stone, of course, also being incredible here.
Indeed.
For a second, I actually thought this was a sideboard game because that's a Thragtusk that was played, but Adrian actually does play one copy of Thragtusk in his main deck.
The Thrag Dad made the main deck here for Adrian.
Nice little value creature.
And by the way, that's another just good card against Humans. I mean, this has not gone well for Brian Braun-Duin. And right now, he's playing it out because that's what you do when you're in the top 8 of a Mythic championship. But the bare truth is he knows he's lost this game. This one's over.
Yeah, definitely. The Humans decks has ways to kind of slow you down in terms of mana development. With Dahlia, they can disrupt you lightly with cards like Kitesail Freebooter, but it doesn't actually have a way to prevent Tron from doing its thing once it has all the mana. It doesn't have cards like Field of Ruin or anything like that, so or Damping Sphere, which is a sideboard option. So at this point, Adrian, with the Walking Ballista and the Ugin, it's going to be maybe a turn or two. I wouldn't be shocked if Brian just concedes at this point.
Yeah. My expert opinion here is that Adrian Zhu is significantly ahead and that this game is effectively over. And it looks like
expert opinion.
Yeah,
huh?
I dropped it on you.
Oh, look at that. And then he scooped.
And BBD agreed with me. So Adrian Zhu picks up game number 1. But I should remind you, if you're watching at home, especially if you haven't joined us for a Mythic Championship Top 8, that we've got best of 5s.
Yeah. As you notice, Adrian actually went to grab his sideboard, and he was like, oh, wait a second. Because this is really the only actual tournament where you do play best of 5.
That's right. It is actually funny because that same thing happened. Matt Sperling did the same thing after their first game, and they were like, maybe not. So Tien Nguyen versus Matt Sperling here. You can see that this is the third top 8 here for Matt. He has had quite a distinguished career now. I mean, 3 top 8s is putting him up into some pretty rarefied air. This is the first one here for Tien Nguyen, and Tien was the first seed coming in, having really crushed the tournament all by himself at the top of the standings at the end of the Swiss portion. So really impressive stuff here from Tien. Again, we're doing best 3 out of 5, not best 2 out of 3. And what that means is the first 2 games are played without sideboards, and then any subsequent games after that will involve the sideboard. So we're just going to get right back into it here without sideboarding, which is kind of nice, just get things moving.
Yep.
Take a look at our beautiful feature match area here in London. It's a really cool location. We're right by the river. And what we're going to do, though, is we're going to let our players finish up the procedures here to get ready and take a short break. We'll be back right after this. All right, we're back in the feature match area here in London, and players are ready for game number 2. Game number 1 was convincing victory both on our front table and the table you see in the background there as well. Not really close. It was the big mana decks that got the job done. A quick start here, though, for Sperling. He's got Signal Pest and a Memnite off of a basic mountain.
Oh, and
a little weird.
Engineered Explosives, a nice little spicy one of in Tien's main. He has that in the opener. It looks like both players started with a mulligan here.
Ooh, Mox Opal, though, now. This is the kind of explosive stuff that you can see from Affinity. And look at that. There's a cranial plating. Is there a land? There is.
Oh, this
Fire
is a big
of Industry,
attack.
and bang. 1, 2, 3, 4 extra there just from the plating.
So this is an attack for 6. Yep. As the Signal Pest does have the Battle Cry, which will pump the Memnite. And with 4 artifacts being in play, that's Tien already down to 14 life here. And Tien does have Engineered Explosives in hand. He can actually play it for 0 to get both the Memnite and the Mox Opal off the battlefield, which would then also lower the effectiveness of that cranial plating, as there will only be 2 artifacts in play.
Yeah, the plating is the card he would like to see disappear the most, but I don't think he's going to have the luxury of that kind of time. So it is going to be Engineered Explosives for no mana. That's going to keep 0 Sunburst counters on it, but that means he does have the mana available to sacrifice it right now and dwindle that side of the board. Now, is it enough? That's the question, because look at this. Here's Arcbound Ravager now for Matt Sperling. And what does he have here? Well, he's got an Inkmoth Nexus, which he has played, tapped, activated. When it becomes a creature, it's also an artifact, so that's going to add 1 extra damage thanks to the cranial plating.
Yeah, this is going to be really rough for Tien. Oh, and wow.
Whoa.
That was it.
He just conceded. He must have been missing a drop or not had any more interactive spells, because that was game number 2 going just about as quickly as game number 1. I think we're about 6 minutes of actual gameplay into this quarterfinal match here, and it's already 1-1.
Yeah, I'm actually curious what the win rate is when you do start with Mox Opal in the Affinity deck. I think your chance to win goes up something like 10%.
10?
Well, just from my experience,
Holy
I played
smokes.
a ton of Affinity, and every time you draw Mox Opal, it feels like you're just playing a different format, because you're just playing a Mox in your deck.
Yes.
And so, that was an incredible start for him. But at the same time, Tien, it didn't look like he had land number 3, and you cannot afford to miss land drops, because the whole point of playing this Tiny Shift deck is to continue playing lands until you can actually get triggers off Valakut the Molten Pinnacle.
Okay, well, looks like we're going to pop over to our back table once again, where players are just mulliganing. In this case, Adrian Zhu looks like he's thought that process over a little bit and has decided to send it back. We should mention here, Paul, that we are doing the London mulligan here, and this is a new thing being, what is it, just being tried out here in London? Is that how, little test?
Yeah, so we're trying out the London mulligan here. We just, want to see what the response is, and also we're also looking to record the data from this event. And
so R&D at Wizards of the Coast is actually gathering data.
Absolutely.
As well.
So heading into round 4 of the event, you had your results slip, but on top of that, the players were also asked, how many times did you mulligan, what deck were you playing, and who won, and for each game. And we just kind of want to look how much that impacted the actual win rates. And just take a look to see if this mulligan is reasonable for some of the older formats. From a lot of the responses that I've received, players have really loved it for limited, because you just have, of course, just more games. You have less games where you have to mulligan and you get mana screwed. I feel like it's going to be pretty good for standard. But yeah, I mean, it of course definitely has affected the way people have kind of approached modern. And I think
which deck they brought.
And one of the decks that certainly benefits the most would be a deck like Tron. Although interestingly enough, Tron was the most played deck in the tournament. It only had a 47% win rate, actually.
Wow, really?
In this event.
Below 50%.
So players were prepared for Tron. And that's kind of the nature of Modern. Sure, a deck gets stronger, but because of the power level of the format and it being so high, players can just make adjustments. So in any given week, one deck can be the best deck, but that doesn't really matter because players will make all the necessary adjustments to be able to beat you. I mean, look at Tien. He had main deck Monvoli Acid Moss.
Yeah.
You see a lot of the control decks playing multiple Field of Ruins. A lot of people expected Arclight Phoenix decks, so you saw Surgical Extraction. So, it's almost self-correcting in a sense, but in terms of just the pure power level and just even trying to theory craft like what would be powerful, I think a lot of players did come to the conclusion that Tron was one of the kind of the decks that benefited the most from this.
Yeah, we did see it a lot out in the field. We're underway here in game number 2. Adrian on 5 cards, though, taking advantage of that mulligan rule. And he found a Tron piece off the top of the library, but was another mine. So a little awkward for him, but he does get to resolve Ancient Stirrings here and dig around to find what he needs. Now, on the other side of the battlefield, really one of the scariest cards to see out of this Humans deck is Aether Vial, though the second one, not quite as good, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's still not the worst. It really, of course, just depends on your hand. But if you can get him out early, you can still just be able to just have really, really explosive turns. But yes, I mean, I think 1 Aether Vial is ideal, but even 2 is still pretty strong.
Worldbreaker is what Adrian Ju found.
And this is not the start that Adrian was looking for here.
Really not. Or is that an Endbringer, actually? Couldn't quite see it.
Oh,
but
that is actually an Urza's Tower, however, and he does have an Expedition map. So Adrian does have Tron. He won't be able to play a 7-mana card on turn 3, but turn 4, he does have the opportunity to play one of his heavy hitters.
BBD off to the start here. He's going to, though, sacrifice a Horizon Canopy with another Horizon Canopy, just looking for action. He doesn't actually need lands on the battlefield to deploy his threats, but he'd love to get this Champion of the Parish a counter or two before it starts attacking in.
Yeah, given that the Vial is on 2-1, he just wants to make sure he can get in for more damage, put pressure, because, you know, the Tron deck does have inevitability. Adrian is going to have Tron next turn. He just needs to basically race. Now, he does have an interesting decision here. He has a Kitesail Freebooter in hand, so he can run it out now to get in for an additional point of damage. Alternatively, he can wait until Adrian's draw step to just have, increase the potential for him to nab something like an Oblivion Stone or Karn or Ugin if Adrian has it on top of his deck. And Brian doesn't know that Adrian needs to search for the Tron, so he might be very concerned about cards like Oblivion Stone or Karn Liberated next turn.
Right. So it's Cavernous Souls as the land drop for the turn, and I feel like BBD is going to be patient here with that freebooter, but he really is considering just trying to get in that extra point of damage.
Yeah, I think the 1 damage is not as important as that extra card that you get to see off the Kitesail Freebooter, and I think that's what Brian has determined here as well.
Okay, so he's in for 1, and here we go. Draw step, Kitesail Freebooter. So this is maximum information. And let's see what Adrian's working with here.
And he has 1 target, as Kitesail Freebooter makes it so that you take a non-creature, non-land spell. So Relic of Progenitus gets nabbed here from the freebooter. So Adrian does not have any strong plays this turn, but of course we know the Tron deck is full of high-impact, powerful, colorless spells. So Adrian will have the ability here to sacrifice Expedition Map, get Tron next turn, and then he's going to be able to play the World Breaker. So Brian really wants to draw Meddling Mage. He wants to find a Meddling Mage, name that World Breaker, because that World Breaker is going to be extremely problematic here. And Brian, nice start with the Aether Vials, but not a lot of pressure right now. He might be interested in cracking the Horizon Canopy here just for more information.
That's exactly what he's going to do.
And yeah, he doesn't find any disruption, so he needs to just get aggressive here. He's probably going to run out Mantis Rider and just try to get in for as much damage as possible, and then maybe hope to draw something like a Reflector Mage to get that World Breaker off the table.
Yeah, World Breaker having reach is really annoying when you're holding 2 copies of Mantis Rider, and that's kind of your primary game plan at this point. Still, he does have a productive turn here, as he's going to get to deploy effectively 2 Mantis Riders. He actually has another one in his hand as well. So 3, 6, 9, 10, 11 damage. That is no joke, but as you said, that World Breaker can turn things around.
Right, but this is a huge attack.
This is massive.
So Adrian's going to take 11, go to 8. Even if he has a World Breaker and he blocks Champion of the Parish, I think Brian just has a lethal attack. So Adrian actually, I don't think World Breaker is going to be enough here, so he's going to need to find one of the many sweepers that he has. Oblivion Stone would be great. Ugin would be great. I don't know if Walking Ballista would be enough. If you had something...
It feels like it would be, but maybe not, because remember, he gets a kind of a freebie on the image. He gets to block on the ground, maybe kill the Kite Sail Freebooter or something, or if he has enough counters, kill one of the other Mantis Riders, then I think he's in fine shape.
Yeah, he would be able to play an 4/4 Walking Ballista.
Yeah.
So he could block Champion of the Parish. Before damage, he can kill Mantis Rider and ping the Phantasmal Image and kill that one as well. So, and then he would only take 4 damage.
Yeah, so he'd be in good shape then. But does he have it is the question. There's that third Tron piece.
Oh, my goodness. That's an Oblivion Stone.
Holy smokes.
Off the top.
Adrian Zhu, everybody. He did say yesterday in an interview that he's a lucky person. And boy, has he shown us here. Oblivion Stone is exactly what he needed. BBD just saw his game plan fall apart.
I mean, keep in mind, this was a mulligan to 5 from Adrian, and this is what the Tron deck's capable of.
Yes.
It has so many of those heavy hitters. You know, it seems like, oh my god, I can't believe you drew this card, but they have lots of cards like Oblivion Stone. Mm-hmm. Ugin was a card. Walking Ballista that we talked about was also an option for Adrian, but this was... You know, outside of Ugin, this was the best possible draw for Adrian Zhu.
I don't know if I can watch this, Paul.
Look at this.
Look at that devastation.
Oh, my goodness.
What was that? 6 cards going in the graveyard for Brian. And remember, Adrian even got back the card that was under the freebooter as well.
Oh,
so
wow.
Disgusting stuff there from Adrian Zhu.
And then Ugin off the top afterwards on top of that. This is ridiculous.
Are you serious right now? Brian Brown-Duin must be looking at this like, come on, you mulliganed to 5.
Yeah. Just classic Tron things. He's going to just fire off an Ugin here, plus deal 3 damage to Mantis Rider, and then he can also use that extra mana that he has left over and cast Relic of Progenitus.
This game, well, first off, it's over.
Right.
And second, that was nasty.
That was ridiculous.
Not nice of Adrian Zhu at all to draw that card. BBD's game plan of just simply piling on as many Mantis Riders as possible actually looked like it was going to get there, and now it is completely fallen apart. Adrian's at 8 life, and he has Ugin the Spirit Dragon on the battlefield. Again, that's really public enemy number 1 for the Humans deck.
Yeah, I think Adrian had something like 7 cards that was going to be very impactful there. 4 Oblivion Stones, 1 Ugin, and he actually might have 2 Ugins. And then, of course, Walking Ballista. Yeah, he does have 2 Ugins and 2 Walking. So he had 8 cards he could have drawn there that would have been highly impactful. But still need to draw those cards.
Yeah, and also highly impactful might be understating. I mean, that was disgusting. Now we're going to see Worldbreaker. No. Or actually, maybe just both of these. It's Expedition map.
Yeah, he's going to play Worldbreaker, but did he play a land this turn? No, he did not play a land this turn, right? Because so he can actually go ahead and fetch Sanctum of Ugin here, just for even more inevitability. He has
a mana floating as well.
Right. So he has 1 mana floating, plays Sanctum of Ugin, and he should have enough for Worldbreaker. Sacrifice Sanctum of Ugin and go get that Walking Ballista to finish things off. But, I mean, this game is basically over. The Humans deck doesn't have a whole lot of reach. You can't just burn your opponent out. I mean, Mantis Rider, I think, being the only option, but I think 3 of those are in Brian's graveyard.
Yeah, and also the Worldbreaker here is a brick wall for that as well. And here we go. Triggers on triggers, and this is Sanctum of Ugin going away. Probably just going to get a Ballista. No, I'm wrong. Might as well go big. It's Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, though. That is not even necessary at this point. And again, BBD playing it out because that's just what you do when you're in the top of an MC, but this looks like a scoop scenario here for Brian, and he is going to exactly do so in a quick 2-0 start here for Adrian Zhu. He is up 2-0, which means of the next potential games, he only needs to win 1.
Oh, yeah, and what a draw. He absolutely needed it there. He was just dead. Worldbreaker, turn 4 Worldbreaker was not going to be enough against the human deck. He needed to find one of those sweepers, and he did. And the Tron deck does have a lot of those types of cards where you can just basically draw, these sweepers that can get you back. And that's kind of the big problem with the humans deck. There's different types of ways to kind of sweep the board, so you can't even Meddling Mage all of them. So now we're in sideboarded games, and oftentimes in situations like this, Affinity is the deck that really suffers the most because there's just so many high impact sideboard cards for artifact hate in the format. I think one of the advantages, however, coming into this specific tournament was because so many people were focused on Graveyard and Tron, it's possible that people may have skimped on artifact hate. For example, taking a look at Tien's sideboard, he only has one copy of Ancient Grudge. Oftentimes people play
4 of those.
Oh yeah, people used to play 3 to 4, and stuff like that could matter. However, he still does have really impactful cards. He has one of the best cards. He's got Shatterstorm.
Paul,
I'm sorry. What happened?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that was Lightning Bolt on end step, untap, get a land, play Engineered Explosives for 0, sweep your board.
Oh, and then now just a 1/1 flyer.
Yeah, it has lifelink.
Yeah,
I can give you lifelink. That's as far as I'm willing to go. Oh, this is just getting disgusting.
Yeah, Affinity is very weak to sweepers and also artifact hate and spot removal. And Tien has plenty of cards to sideboard out in this matchup. He had 3 copies of Relic of Progenitus that he had in the main, and I imagine those Moonvoli Acid Moss are also cards that he would sideboard out.
Thoughtseize out of the sideboard here for Matt Sperling takes away, I believe it was a Primeval Titan, and leaves Tien Nguyen with just lands in hand. It is funny because sometimes you'll see this Titan Shift deck and think, oh wow, they're really flooding out, but it's kind of the game plan, right? It's like they run so many lands and so many ways to get lands, and they really only need the one Primeval Titan or the one Scape Shift to just finish off the game.
Oh, and look at that.
There's a Scape Shift off the top of the library. It's exactly how we drew it up if you're sitting in 10-win seat. In the meantime, he's going to start chipping away. And we've got an epic race here. Vault Scourge versus Sakura Tribe Elder. This could take a while. Boy, that 3-for-1 with that Engineer Explosives was just mean.
Oh, yeah, it was brutal. And I want to point out that Tien actually did not sacrifice Sakura Tribe Elder. That's the thing that people just often tend to do here. But he does want to keep Matt Sperling's life total below 18. That's kind of the magic number, because if your opponent is at 18 life, if you have 7 lands in play and cast Scape Shift, you can get Valakut and 6 Mountains to deal the full 18 points of damage. And because Tien didn't have anything to ramp into there was no very powerful 5-drop that he has, he could have actually waited on the Sakura Tribe Elder.
I wonder if he found a Titan here.
Now he sacrificed the Sakura Tribe Elder just in case he draws Primeval Titan. And he actually drew Summoner's Pact off the top here.
He did. He found it. So that is effectively a Primeval Titan. I wonder if he has another one in his hand, because he did sack that Sakura Tribe Elder as if he had a play to make here.
So I think that he sacrificed it just to put himself in a position to cast Primeval Titan.
Because now that he crossed that threshold of 6, he says, if I draw a Titan or if I draw a Summoner's Pact, I need to be able to cast it right away. And that's exactly what happened.
Right, exactly, because if he sacked the Sakura Tribe Elder on the previous turn, he would have still only had access to 5 mana.
I see.
That's not the breakpoint. The breakpoint here is 6 mana. So even if you don't have Primeval Titan, you need to sacrifice the Sakura Tribe Elder in case you draw Primeval Titan or Summoner's Pact to play it this turn. And this is, Tien has played this deck for years. He has mastered the ins and outs of this deck, and he understands all the breakpoints for this deck.
And look at this. It was Experimental Frenzy for Sperling, but we caught it on camera there. A little head shake from him like, I can cast this. This is the most powerful spell in his deck by a lot. And it just wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. That Primeval Titan threatened to just kill Matt Sperling the next turn with a combination of triggers from Valakut the Molten Pinnacle and just damage from the 6/6 Trampler, and that is game number 3 going to 10 wins. So that's going to bring us back to our back table here.
How many seconds of game time has
Paul? I have not taken a breath as of yet. I feel like we got into the booth, thought, okay, let's get warmed up, kind of sit down. Paul, let's just get the vocal cords going. And instead, we just got thrown into the firefight here between these players, because it has been haymaker after haymaker. We have seen 3-for-1, 6-for-1. The removal spells and the sweepers have been doing overtime.
Yeah, Matt Sperling won on turn 3, I believe, in game 2. And Tien just plays so quickly. Games have ended immediately after he just ramped up to Primeval Titan with a little bit of disruption.
I tell you, these players are going to run us out of gas.
Yeah,
we still have some more matches to do today, Paul. We can't waste it all early, but I am excited to kick the day off with some big flashy plays in the feature match here in our first quarterfinal. If you're just joining us, we've got a second set of quarterfinals to bring you next. Then we'll be going through the semifinals one at a time. And then, of course, that'll bring us to the finals where, at the end of the day, we're going to be giving away a trophy.
And it looks like we might be heading to Brian and Adrian Zhu.
We are.
And you can see Brian with $177,000 in lifetime earnings. A large chunk of that coming from winning the World Championships a few years back on actually a standard humans. So he has just kind of mastered the ins and outs of playing Thali as lieutenant. You play it with a lot of humans in play.
I see. Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
that's why I'm here.
Wait, did we agree on lieutenant or lieutenant? Since
I mean, I'm going to go with lieutenant because that's what it says on the card. But
all right. See, the thing is, we are in England, and you don't want to be, you want to kind of adopt the local customs. But
yeah, but
your evidence about what's on the card is definitely. But here, I'm gonna shake your confidence absolutely to the ground here, Paul.
Oh,
so
no.
I agree with what you said. It's on the card. What about the word colonel?
The word what?
Colonel. I'm going to let you think about that one. We're going to take a short commercial break, and we'll be back with more right after this. Colonel? Well, you said we should read it as it said on the card, right? Well, what if there was a card that was a colonel, in the military? It says colonel.
Colonel. Well, that's
you wouldn't say that.
That's just English things. I mean, that's just a language
thing.
No, that's a language thing. I'm saying like that.
So is lieutenant.
No, yeah, but
you're in big trouble with the English viewers here, buddy.
I'm too confused now.
All right, let's take a look at this opener. I believe that Adrian is still in the process of resolving his London mulligan here. He's been really exercising that right, perhaps a bit more than he'd like, although he's been able to make it work.
Yeah, it has taken him this far. So, I think one of the problems actually, or with the Tron deck, is people don't mulligan enough. I think people need to be aggressively mulliganing. If you just have a Tron land and a Sylvan Scryings, but no other real way to cycle through your deck, you need to mulligan that hand. You're just not going to be able to keep up with other decks unless you get Tron on turn 3, sometimes turn 4. So people, even on a mulligan to 6, will be like, oh, well, I got... Well, not, I guess I mulligan to 7 again, but it's like, oh, you know what? I have a Tron land and I have an Ancient Stirrings. Maybe I can get there. No, you're supposed to send that back and just go back and mulligan again just to make sure you have the highest chance of hitting Tron on turn 3.
All right, well, we're underway, but that was a mulligan to 4 there for Adrian. You saw he put back 3 cards from that 7-card opener, and he is going to be at a significant deficit here, though, as you just described, Paul, if he can put together Tron and even resolve one big explosive spell. All it really came down to last time was one spell that won him the game. Now, he did need a few more to actually finish up, but it really kind of took the wind out of BBD's sails last time. And a quick 2-0 start for Adrian Zhu means that if he can put together a win off of this mulligan to 4, he'll be into the semis. That said, he's facing a nice draw, at least thus far, from Brian Braun-Duin with the Ether Vial. The question is, can he back it up?
This is really interesting.
Another one of these.
Brian, debating what to do here. He did have a Meddling Mage there. I thought he was maybe considering playing Meddling Mage, maybe name something like Sylvan Scrying, because there is a Chromatic Star in play, and that would be the play that Adrian could make next turn.
It's also the card that he drew this turn.
Does he just have Tron on turn 3 again? He's going to sack Star for green mana. He does have a Power Plant in hand.
He drew a Nature's Claim, so he has a Stirrings.
Okay.
So, but still, he can find it with Stirrings. He can find a tower.
Okay, you know what? It looked like a Sylvan Scrying to me, but
it did to me too. But we have it listed as a Nature's Claim, so we'll just assume that that's what it is until proven otherwise.
I think he might have both. He is. Yeah, he had Nature's Claim in his opening hand. The reason why he has Nature's Claim, it's not just for the 4 Ether Vials. Brian Braun-Duin also has Damping Sphere, which is very, very effective against Tron. So Adrian likely bringing in some copies of that Nature's Claim.
Yeah, well, he's got a Thragtusk there, too. Yeah, there it is, right there. That
mulligan to 4, no big deal.
Yeah. I thought I saw a Sylvan Scrying.
Right. Now this is the thing. I'm sure Brian is thinking, he's like, oh, man, maybe I should have played the Meddling Mage. Did I really need to run out the second Ether Vial?
Because now he has to play this guessing game where he has to figure out one of the many problematic permanent sweepers, whatever.
Right.
And he won't really have any information where if you can prevent Adrian from getting the mana, then you're effectively naming all of them.
But take a look at this. Adrian actually not fetching out the Tron
What?
and getting Forest instead here
What?
to be able to cast cards like Nature's Claim and Ancient Stirrings from hand. Look at this. Because he doesn't have one of the payoff cards, it looks like Adrian is actually opting for Forest here to just string together some lands to be able to just hardcast Thragtusk.
Yeah, this flies in the face of everything that Tron is about, which is getting Tron and then drawing the piece that you need.
Right.
Everybody knows when you play against Tron, they always find what they need on top of their library. That's just how the deck works.
Maybe Adrian just has a read on Brian. Maybe he thinks that Brian is holding Damping Sphere in hand, and that's why he was thinking so long turn 2. If you do think your opponent has Damping Sphere in hand,
which he does, by the way.
Right. It does make sense to get Nature's Claim, to be able to Nature's Claim the Damping Sphere, and hope that your Ancient Stirrings get you there.
You mean get Forest?
Oh, sorry, get Forest.
Yeah, so that you can unlock that Nature's Claim, and then later on down the line. I mean, also interesting, this is the big turn here for BBD, right?
Yep.
I mean, this is the turn where he is supposed to be able to use up effectively 2, 4, 5, maybe 6 mana worth of creatures here and really affect the board. So this is a big step, and Adrian's going to have a lot more information about what's coming after this.
Brian must also be a bit confused here. He's going, wait, you Sylvan's Grind for Forest? What's going on? You must have Tron already, right?
Yes. That is what I would assume for sure if I was BBD.
So BBD running out Meddling Mage first, and if he does want to play Damping Sphere, he can play it after. That sequencing makes a lot more sense because you can't go Damping Sphere into Meddling Mage, I don't think.
Right, because it would be your second spell.
Right.
Thankfully, Aether Vial doesn't care, and he even gets Thalia on the battlefield. But as you can see, BBD is now empty-handed, and this is Adrian Jou's world now. He needs to set up a scenario where he can probably first take care of the Damping Sphere and then find Tron plus a sweeper. This is a lot to do for Adrian. But having gone and got that Forest with the Sylvan Scrying means that he does have Ancient Stirring's Nature's Claim, and he's going to cast another copy of Sylvan Scrying here. Now does he get Tron? Yes. He finds Urza's Tower.
Yeah, and Sylvan Scrying was a huge draw there.
Both of them.
Now he has the Tron, and he has the mana here to be able to cast Nature's Claim and play big thing next turn. And Brian, he does have a really good set of disruption set up, but not a huge clock here. Only 4 power on the battlefield here with Thalia and Meddling Mage.
So let's see if Brian can find some help here, because if he can find something that can either increase his clock or get some disruption, it would be great. Something like a land would really not be
not that.
One of the worst case scenarios for him. A third copy of Aether Vial. This is, of course, the risk that you take when you play a card like Aether Vial. You get that explosiveness, but sometimes you draw one, or in this case, maybe even too many of them. And it really does reduce the potency of your draw, because think about it. Each of those Aether Vials could have been a creature. Would you trade a creature for the first one? Yeah. Oh, that was Oblivion Stone. Now, remember, we do have Meddling Mage naming it, so right now it is not castable, but that could change if he can get rid of Meddling Mage one way or the other.
Yeah. Adrian does
Maybe
have access to some.
Here.
He does have access to some dismembers in the sideboard. So if he did bring some of those in, he can use it on the Meddling Mage. Now, he has a Thragtusk, but keep in mind, he cannot cast the Thragtusk yet. He needs to use Nature's Claim to get Damping Sphere off the battlefield, because Damping Sphere is preventing those Tron lands from being turned on. They all tap for a single colorless mana.
That's right. So this turn is basically going to be dedicated to getting Damping Sphere off the battlefield, it looks like. And Reflector Mage was the draw step there for Brian Braun-Duin. Now, he doesn't need to cast that right now. There's no benefit to doing so. He has the Aether Vial. He can just wait. But we're going to see Nature's Claim right now.
2 mana.
He does have to pay an extra for that. There we go. There's a lot of static abilities that can pile up from this Humans deck. The Damping Sphere plus Thalia, plus also not forgetting Meddling Mage's ability can make it a little bit difficult, but BBD reminded Adrian.
But here's the big turn. What will Adrian find?
We'll have to wait another draw step to find out, because he found Chromatic Star. Now, he does have a lot of options, though. He has Ancient Stirrings in his hand as well. Or, Thragtusk is a card.
Yeah, he could also just run out Thragtusk.
Yeah, maybe he'll just crack the star and then just play Thragtusk and Stirrings.
Yeah, he can do that, get a little more information. The Chromatic Star does cost 2 mana here. So now he has a colorless and a green mana floating. And because he drew an Urza land, he can play Ancient Stirrings and still play Thragtusk.
Yeah, getting that Damping Sphere off the battlefield is proving extremely important on multiple axes here.
So Ancient Stirrings will eat up all the remaining mana that's left in his mana pool. Because Thalia is on the battlefield, of course, making spells cost 1 more, or non-creature spells. And does he find one of his amazing colorless cards?
Yeah, so what does he want here? Oblivion Stone is not castable, but he has one in his hand. He ended up just going for a Chromatic Sphere, it looks like.
Yeah, that's a bit disappointing, but it does let him continue to cycle through. Although I imagine at this point he's just going to run out a Thragtusk and then start cycling through the star next turn. This will gain him 5 life, and Thragtusk is also very effective against Reflector Mage.
Super annoying.
If Brian vials in the Reflector Mage, Adrian will still get a 3/3 token, which still does an amazing job blocking here.
That's right, and then Thragtusk will come down after another turn cycle, gain another 5 life, and be really just annoying for Brian Braun-Duin. So he's just not even going to cast this Reflector Mage. This is just not where BBD wants to be. This top 8 has not gone well for him thus far, and now he finds himself facing down Adrian Zhu, down 2-0, mildly behind on board, attacking with the now 3/2 first striking Thalia into the Thragtusk. Adrian says, sure, I'll just take it. But this was Adrian on 4 cards, Paul, and it looks like he's at least at parity, and in a precarious position is Brian Braun-Duin, because you know how it is. It's one draw step away from an Ugin or something huge, and this game is over.
Absolutely.
I like Adrian's position here. I mean, sure, BBD's slightly ahead on board. He does have the Meddling Mage naming one of the most problematic cards in Oblivion Stone, but that is not the only way that Adrian can just blow out this game. And yeah, there's that 3rd copy of Aether Vial, just really not what BBD wants.
Yeah, the thing is, Brian just drew too many Aether Vials. He just doesn't have enough pressure.
Yeah.
He needed something like a Mantis Rider or...
Okay, well, he did find himself a Kitesail Freebooter. He's going to cast that on draw step. And he'll get something, but none of these are particularly amazing either.
He's probably taking the Chromatic Sphere because he wants to just completely limit the threats that he can get, because Expedition Map is just going to get you another land. So I imagine he's just going to go ahead and take the Sphere here, because Adrian can easily cycle that Sphere and find a threat.
Brian Braun-Duin absolutely clinging to this slight lead he has on board. Boy, he'd love to see something like a Mantis Rider and just start bashing.
Or Thalia's Lieutenant.
Exactly. That would be the type of card that BBD would like to see. Oh, Paul Cheon still got it. Takes away the Chromatic Sphere there. And as you mentioned, this Expedition Map is fine, but it does not get you a threat. That's just the nature of it. He's still at the mercy of the top of his library. He does have the ultra-powerful Ancient Stirrings in his deck, which is one of the few ways that he can really get card selection going. But right now, he's out of gas. Adrian Zhu does not have anything going, and he needs to find something. And from BBD's perspective, boy, just any big threat would be so good. What did he find, another Freebooter?
It looks like it. And just the big problem here is Brian just can't really get in for a lot. This Thragtusk is being very problematic to this board because Brian doesn't really have any way to pump his creatures. So all he's able to do right now is get in for 3 points of damage at a time with that Thalia.
Adrian Zhu is content to just keep taking it. He's now going to sacrifice that Expedition Map on end step because, hey...
Tower?
Why not?
Probably Sanctum of Ugin, actually.
That is the one utility land that he currently doesn't have. So he's going to get that. And again, I'll tell you what, the table is set. He has the silverware. He's got the napkin. He put it in his lap. He's got a nice tall glass of water. He just needs dinner to show up. It can be anything. I mean, Oblivion Stone, of course, is a blank at this point, but basically anything else, and he will go off. You'll see that Sanctum of Ugin go away. You'll see him start to dominate this board. There's really none of his payoff cards are bad at this juncture, and some of them are devastating.
Yep.
Ugin probably being the number one. Does he find something here?
Even if he doesn't, he does have time. But Brian is using Kitesail Freebooter on Adrian's draw step, and Adrian... drew just a forest for this turn.
So he can just play one of these lands and pass the turn back once again. Brian Braun hanging on and chipping away. Just needs a few more draw steps to go his way. These freebooters do have flying.
Yeah, Brian really, really wants to draw a threat. Or Damping Sphere, I suppose. That would also be very good. But if you can find something that pumps the team, Mantis Rider.
Oh, Brian Braun just cannot find the big hitting punch. He has found spells, though. He can't complain. But it's just not the end the game type stuff that he'd like. You mentioned the Thalia's Lieutenant, and we were talking about Mantis Rider as well, but instead it's just these smaller disruptive element. Yeah, and Adrian can block if he chooses, though it will be pretty bad for him if he does, because that really does turn on that Reflector Mage. So Adrian's like, sure, I'll just take it again. It's 9 damage that Thalia's gotten. Cavernous Souls Go is going to be the play here for BBD, and once again, Adrian just needs to say, look, he told us he was lucky. Prove it, Adrian. You're on a mulligan to 4. You're still in this game. Rip something.
Well, he did draw some that Oblivion Stone in the last game.
Yep. It was Sylvan Scrying, I believe, off the top of the library.
So now the opportunity to draw something amazing. Brian is able to chip away here. At some point, Adrian will have to block with that Thragtusk.
Yep.
But if it gets to that position, then Brian might start attacking with the Flyers to guarantee that he gets in damage. Adrian thinning out the deck and also just making sure he has access to a ton of mana. Walking Ballista would be an incredible draw off the top here.
He has so many good draws, and he has not been able to find them.
Yeah. Not only does he have
a mold of 4.
Right, but not only does he have just the big threats that he can just naturally draw, of course, you have redraws in your deck. Cards like Chromatic Star, Chromatic Spear, and even Ancient Stirrings.
Yes.
Those are the things that Adrian's looking for.
Yeah, the deck is a lot more threat dense than it looks. You think, well, what do they have? A few Karns, some big expensive Planeswalkers, whatever. But like you said, the deck actually functions much smaller than the 60-card limit because of those redraws and the fact that you can use Ancient Stirrings to just churn through your library. I mean, Ancient Stirrings would be, for us, easily the best one because that's the sweat, right?
Yeah, that makes it exciting. And it's got to be the 5th card down.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously. Yeah.
We can dream, right? We can hope. Ancient Stirrings has become consensus one of the best, most powerful cards in Modern. Is had a mild start. People are like, yeah, that card's okay. Now it's getting play in some of the best decks in the format, and it really has gotten its respect. Is this the turn? Yes, it is. Yep. Thragtusk is going to block. First Strike is going to kill it, and that will generate a 3/3, but this really means that this is it, right? Because that 3/3 will not be on the battlefield. Can Adrian Zhu find some way? No, it's another Tron piece off the top of the library. And I think he's just dead here.
Yeah, Brian has Reflector Mage. He can Violent Reflector Mage, get that token off the battlefield, and he has an attack for 8.
8, exactly lethal. And there we go, Reflector Mage to send that wolf packing. And look at this, Adrian's not even going to make him attack. He says, all right, we are done here. Wow, Brian Braun just hanging on, and he was able to outlast the lack of top decks from Adrian. Well, he told us yesterday he was lucky.
If you look at that game, and of course Brian had a ton of permanents on the battlefield, but I feel like when Adrian had that Thragtusk in play and was at I think Adrian was a pretty big favorite there, and he just whiffed on 5 or 6 draws in a row.
Boy, we have seen a lot of mulligans. I wonder if the players are being, much more aggressive with their mulligans given the London mulligan rule. This is something maybe to take back to the office as well, Paul. What if players are just mulliganing more often? That has different effects on tournaments, on the way that the game is played. If you make mulligans too good, well, people do it all the time. And we are on 5 cards to 6 cards here on our other quarterfinal match. 10 went up 2-1 on Matt Sperling as we come in. Matt's playing Affinity. He has Ornithopter to kick things off. He also had Steel Overseer, but it has soaked up a lot of lightning bolts over the course of the weekend, and it did so here as well.
Curious to see what Matt Sperling goes for here, and that's another Steel Overseer, another must-kill threat. Tien already had the lightning bolt, and Tien just on all mountains.
This could get very sketchy, especially because Matt Sperling has Cranial Plating in hand, and he just drew Etch Champion as well.
Oh, and then he's going to activate Inkmoth Nexus, and then activate Steel Overseer, and then attack for 1 with Ornithopter.
How do you know?
What?
You're just guessing. You have no idea.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like you were right again.
Well,
what did you?
It's the only play.
You had a really strong finish with Affinity, right? You had a, was it a top 16 with this?
Yeah. So I top 16 in a modern. It was a modern Pro Tour.
By the way, we're done.
Yeah. Matt just loves winning on turn 4.
It's just good time to chat about the good old days here, Paul. Because
back into that, it was a couple
over.
years ago. But what's funny about that event is the team that I played on is Team Channel Fireball. They basically broke the format. They all were like, "Hey, Paul, we got this cool Eldrazi deck." I'm like, "What are you talking about? What is this?"
Yeah.
And it was like, "Hey, but it's like a colorless Eldrazi deck, and you should play, temples and all this stuff." And I was like, "Dude, and I just had a child, so I didn't have time to test." So I was like, you know what? I'm just comfortable playing Affinity. I don't know what this Eldrazi deck's about.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna play Affinity. You guys can play this deck, whatever. I'm not even sure if it's good.
Yeah.
And it turns out it was just the best deck in Modern.
Yeah, but it's one of your career highlights because you didn't play that deck and still had one match away from top 8 at that.
Yeah, Affinity's still great
at that event. All right, we're gonna take a short commercial break. We'll be back right after this. And boy, it is fast and furious here in the feature match area here in London. Welcome back. Thanks so much for coming along for coverage of our top 8. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm with Paul Cheon, and this is our first quarterfinal match, but they are going very, very quickly. Not a lot of interaction on our front table between Matt Sperling and Tien Nguyen as things got off to a quick start for both of those players, having evened things up. Now on our back table, we've got Brian Braun-Duin versus Adrian Zhu. BBD, it felt like he got away with one there. Just mulligan to 4 from Adrian, yet he had multiple draw steps to find really anything.
You can go, Adrian.
Yeah, we give you our blessing. Yeah, and he just couldn't. Right. And BBD just hung on and hung on and hung on and got the job done, eventually defeating him. A good start here. Now there's no Ether Vial, but I think BBD's probably fine with that. He saw 3 of them last game. That got to be a bit much. He has Champion of the Parish, which is one of his quickest starts possible.
Yeah,
with
but
Champion.
Adrian, of course, with turn 3 Tron, and you did see him utilize the London Mulligan, did put Ancient Strings on the bottom of his deck, did have this in his opener. He had 2 Tron lands with a Chromatic Sphere and Sylvan Scrying, and he has a wealth of large colorless payoff cards in hand. I think I saw an Oblivion Stone and also Ugin, the Spirit Dragon. No, was it? Yeah, it was Ugin. Okay.
And an Oblivion Stone.
Yeah. So good luck Meddling Mage, both of those things.
Right. This could be it. BBD finally scratching back a win, but he's still down 2-1. And what that means is Adrian is 1 game away from advancing to the semifinals, and it is all the pressure on Brian Braun-Duin. He needs to win back-to-back games here, or he's out of the tournament, have to settle for, a fantastic finish, no doubt about it, but he doesn't want it to end here. And let's see what Adrian has. Here's this Kitesail Freebooter.
This hand is phenomenal. Gross. I mean, he even has the Dismember
to kill the Freebooter.
To kill the Freebooter and play out that Oblivion Stone if he wants.
Yeah, this is exactly what BBD did not want to see. Perfect lineup, because he can't keep the Freebooter on the battlefield no matter what he takes. If he takes away the Dismember, he'll just lose the Freebooter down the line to the Oblivion Stone. And if he switches it, well, then the Dismember just kills it and gets the Oblivion Stone back anyway. So this is just not a good situation here for BBD. And then no matter what happens with that 2-card interaction, there's an Ugin the Spirit Dragon looming in hand and ready to come down and wipe away the entire board of BBD. And yeah, he can play around it a little bit, but he has to play around it by not applying pressure, and that just gives Adrian more time. There's really no great way to approach this hand for BBD. He needs to have more cards in his hand that can prevent these cards from coming down. Meddling Mage and that kind of thing is what he needs to see.
Yeah, I wonder if there's maybe some consideration to taking Dismember and playing to just hoping you draw Damping Sphere next turn, because if Adrian runs out Oblivion Stone next turn, he won't be able to pop it. And then if you do draw Damping Sphere next turn, that would give you an additional turn because it would require 5 mana to sacrifice. But just not a good spot here for Adrian.
For BBD.
For BBD. This does force Adrian to use Dismember here, and he will likely cast Dismember to be able to play out this Oblivion Stone on the Kitesail Freebooter. Oh, he's going to wait. Okay.
He decided just to wait. He says, you know what, you're not really doing that much. I'll be fine. What could possibly go wrong? Off the top of the library, though, for BBD, Mantis Rider. Of course, the great thing about Mantis Rider is that it does have haste in addition to its other abilities. So BBD can get that damage in right away, even if it does die a little bit later. The downside here Adrian's at 18. That is not a game plan that is going to work for BBD because you just run out of Mantis Riders at some point if they turn into lightning bolts.
Definitely. And this is really rough for Brian Brown-Duin because Adrian has Ugin in hand. So whatever Brian plays this turn, Adrian next turn can just play Ugin, minus Ugin, and get rid of all the creatures on the battlefield. He doesn't even have to play Dismember, and then he's going to get that Oblivion Stone back as well. So Brian actually choosing to play Militia Bugler here, knowing that he's going to lose all of his creatures, and would rather keep back the Mantis Rider to be kind of an instant source of damage from his hand. Of course, you can't Bugler for Damping Sphere. But that is a nice card. Gadok T actually does shut down cards like Ugin and Karn. However, of course, we know that Adrian also has Dismember in hand.
Yep. So BBD's going to get in for 4 here.
This is going to be really difficult for BBD to be able to get enough board presence here because Adrian has multiple board wipes in hand.
Just Ugin?
The thing is, I mean, he could play the star to crack and get information, but like ultimately, there's nothing better that you can play here than Ugin.
Right. So may as well just do it. -3 Ugin. And this is a devastating play here. Again, this is literally the worst card for BBD to see on the other side of the battlefield. And this is the reason why. That is a sweeper that then sticks around to pick off really anything else you do. Honestly, that's the match. I mean, you see Ugin the Spirit Dragon hit the battlefield unimpeded against humans, and they just don't have a way to get out of it. In the miracle scenario that they even get Ugin the Spirit Dragon off the battlefield, the damage has already been done, and oftentimes they can't. Like, look at this situation here. Even a Mantis Rider isn't enough to finish off Ugin.
Yeah, for loyalty being very, very key here. If Brian played something like a Noble Hierarch, that would be huge, right? Because that would allow him to use the Exalted trigger from the Noble Hierarch to get in for the 4 points of damage on Ugin. So, sure, you did get rid of Ugin then, but then Adrian still has Tron, still has Oblivion Stone, still has Dismember, still has all these other cards that he can find. So, really, really tough spot here for Brian. And I mean, this is kind of the spot you're like, well, you know, I gotta keep playing, but this is like, how am I even going to beat this Ugin?
Yeah, you know, for all intents and purposes here, we are done. Adrian Zhu is going to be into the semifinals. Once you saw Ugin hit the battlefield, that was almost a lock. Now, we can see BBD, though, is going to try to work his way through. Look, he has to scrap and fight for every single percentage point that he could possibly get here. He has put out 4 power thanks to a Thalia's Lieutenant and a Meddling Mage naming something, but it won't matter because Ugin can start picking apart this board either by plussing or even he can -2 if he'd really like and kill both, but instead it's going to be plus to kill the Meddling Mage. This puts Ugin up to 6 loyalty, and there's a Worm Coil Engine follow-up, and you can see how this works here, Paul. The level of power that we see is just not even close, right? It's a bit of a house of cards on the other side of the battlefield there with the Humans deck where they can take away a key card with Freebooter, name a key card with Meddling Mage, and put just enough pressure up to kill you before you can get rid of them. But this Tron deck has way too many sweepers for that game plan to happen too often.
Yeah, and Brian does have a Reflector Mage in hand. However, you know, even if he uses the Reflector Mage on the Wormcoil Engine, you know, Thalia's Lieutenant will become a 3/3. He can attack the Ugin down to 3, but every single turn it's ticking up. You get that 2 additional points of loyalty, and Ugin by itself is able to just pick off a creature every single turn.
Every turn. And, you know, it's interesting because one sweeper against humans is usually a win. Like,
right.
That is usually good enough, but Ugin's the best sweeper, so down to 3 loyalty, but as you mentioned, only 3 toughness on the other side of the field for that Thalia's Lieutenant. So Adrian Zhu can simply just take it out, go back up to 5 loyalty, and only be facing down 2 power. And this is a sequence that BBD just cannot continue. He's losing material every time this happens. Meanwhile, Adrian is sitting here just casting huge threats and leveraging Ugin. And look at that. The second best card against Brian Brown-Duin off the top of the library is Walking Ballista, though it looks like for now Adrian is just going to cast a Thragtusk, which is going to gain him 5 life and effectively guarantee victory here. There's just really no way for BBD to come back from this position. A tough matchup. He only was able to win the one game against Adrian where Adrian mulliganed to 4, and even then Adrian maneuvered himself into a position where we felt like he was a favorite at one point.
Yeah, definitely. And I think part of the reason why Adrian ran out the Thragtusk here is that does kind of protect him against, maybe something like a Reflector Mage. But on top of that, this allows him to use Oblivion Stone to put a Fate counter on the Ugin to give him that extra layer of protection where if Brian does play something like a Mantis Rider, he can, safely blow up the Oblivion Stone and still protect that Ugin the Spirit Dragon.
Yeah, and Brian actually did draw a Mantis Rider for the turn. Here's Kitesail Freebooter.
Oh, and he's just like,
are you serious?
Why? What did I do to you? Come on.
Look at that smile on BBD's face. It's like, is that a good hand?
Not like this.
Oh, boy. Yeah, you got to love it, though, that BBD can still have a smile on his face here and enjoy the time in his first top 8 Sunday. Absolutely career-defining moment for Brian, and I think everybody was really happy. You saw him celebrating when we announced it, or actually when I announced it for the top 8 yesterday. He came out pumping his fist and kind of dancing, and I was like, good for you, man. Seriously, he has worked really hard and played a long time. He's had a lot of success in our game, but it was great to see him break through here on the Sunday stage. But it does look like his journey will come to an end at the hands of the Canadian Adrian Zhu and his Tron deck with the relentless sweepers and his now best friend. I'm just gonna call it Ugin the Spirit Dragon at his side. Here goes Oblivion Stone. That will keep Ugin on the battlefield. It will get rid of Thragtusk, but leave him with the 3/3 token left over and earn him his Dismember back in hand. And the real question at this point is just how long do we have until this game's over? Because that is Ugin the Spirit Dragon plus target you, which of course is never where you want to be, and
going
replacement
upstairs,
Oblivion Stone.
And then Oblivion Stone as well, and Adrian also still with that Dismember in hand, and Walking Ballista, and Thragtusk. But Brian still fighting the good fight here. And finds a Detention Mage, which would be reasonable if Adrian just didn't have all of the things. Having that Oblivion Stone plus Ugin plus Walking Ballista, just all the most important cards in the matchup with, of course, turn 3 Tron.
Yeah, does Deputy of Detention do anything here?
No. No, it does not, Marshall.
I tried. I'm sorry. I tried.
It can reset Ugin. I think.
Yeah,
I think
it
if
might
anything,
even help Ugin.
I mean, maybe he just kills the beast.
It does guarantee him value.
Right, killing the beast means that he'll at least get something. Right, because
it just adds loyalty to Ugin somehow if he does that. So,
right.
All right. Well, here we go. Adrian finds another Thragtusk, and the hits won't stop coming. There we go. Destroy your board once again. 2 cards left in hand.
It might be
Brian
Ballista time. Is it Ballista time?
Of course it is.
Oh, maybe it's Wormcoil time.
Sure. Must be nice, right? Yeah. It's like, do I want to drive my Lamborghini or my Ferrari today? I'll go for the Ferrari.
Yeah.
It's a little cloudy out,
I mean, Adrian could just play cards at random now at this point.
He really could. He could just sort of throw them onto the battlefield haphazardly and find a way to win here, though. Again, it really is up to Brian Braun-Duin when he wants to end this game. If he wants to take it to his conclusion, that is completely respectable. And, well, you never know, right? I mean,
yeah,
it would take some sort of non-traditional game actions here for him to,
we've seen some incredible things here, but, I mean, Adrian is effectively 99.99999% to win this. Just starts eating away all of these creatures.
We got the big die out now.
Yep.
And here's an attack with Wormcoil Engine. That's going to take over half of the life total from Brian Braun-Duin.
Brian has to block. He knows about Walking Ballista.
That's right. And so he's going to chump block with his Militia Bugler. And into the graveyard with it. So that is Adrian Zhu Now casting Walking Ballista post-combat. He's only doing it for 3. He's going to pass the turn back. Again, he can use the rest of his mana to put another Fate counter on something. And there just is no way out for Brian Braun-Duin. Adrian Zhu is going to advance, and that is the concession. Congratulations, Adrian. You did live up to your word yesterday. He said, look, I'm lucky. Well, he also played well and got the job done. So that is our first semifinalist booked in, and it is Adrian Zhu from Canada. Tron is into the semifinals. That leaves us with one more quarterfinal to kick things off here. On our front table, we've got Tien Nguyen versus Matt Sperling. Matt is playing Affinity, and he's playing a little bit of a twist. This is not a completely traditional Affinity build. He's got Experimental Frenzy in the main deck. We are in a post-sideboard of games here, though, so who knows what his configuration is at this point. On the other side of the battlefield, Tien Nguyen playing his signature deck, Titan Shift. And we have a Game 5. This is going to be the decider. Both players have won 2 games, and I have to say they have been pretty uneventful games. It's just been like, I'm dead. Okay, well, my turn to do that.
You don't have slow grindy. You don't have slow grindy games with Affinity.
No, no, and of course Titan Shift is very single-minded and very consistent. It does give up a little bit of speed for that consistency. You kind of can't have it all in Modern, but I will say that Titan Shift really gets the job done in a consistent pace. Matt Sperling playing very quickly here. He's cast and equipped his Cranial Plating to the Vault Scourge and attacked in. Tien Nguyen's life total starting to fall here. He's already down to 15.
Yeah, Nguyen not having a way to kill that Vault Scourge at instant speed was big because Matt Sperling is gained 5 life that turn. He got in for 5, so he's going to be at 23, and it's a lot more difficult for Tien to just run out, for example, Escape Shift and win and get enough damage that way. So
yeah, that 18 is exactly the number that Tien Nguyen wanted it to be.
Oh, but Tien has... Is that Engineered Explosives? He does have Engineered Explosives in the hand, and that's huge. He can play Engineered Explosives for 2 and get both the Vault Scourge and the Cranial Plating off the board here. Alternatively, you see he has a Chandra Torch of Defiance in hand, so he could play Chandra and minus
just to kill the Vault Scourge?
He could, but then the Chandra would die to the Nexus. I think Engineered Explosives for 2 is the play, and...
Oh.
Wow, he doesn't have an untapped land.
Tapped.
Yeah.
So it means that he's unlikely to die here, right?
Wait, Matt just drew another Cranial Plating. We have to run some numbers here. This is huge. This is already 5 damage.
And remember, we're talking about Ink Moth
I think this is lethal. I think he has lethal.
Look at this. Matt Sperling says, I see a win here.
Activate Nexus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, 13 damage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 13 damage.
That's exactly
oh my
13,
goodness.
And Matt Sperling steals the win. Even he's surprised about piling on that much damage that quickly and through the really kind of game-ending spell on the other side of the battlefield. That Engineered Explosives just looming, ready to take down most of Matt's board. But he says, how about I just kill you right now? And Matt Sperling is our second player into the semifinals. So far, we have Tron and Affinity into the semifinals.